Our next speaker is Jean Depuy. Jean has been everything from a chemistry tutor to a chief of operations, but they've always been passionate about community engagement and community service. They believe passionately in crafting solutions that work on the ground for everyday people, particularly when it comes to climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. Jean is an organizer. Whether it's organizing a scavenger hunt for outdoor power outlets on campus, or organizing econ tutorials and work sessions, or even an MAS MBOC, socially distant or remote Halloween event, it seems to be in their blood. They lead with intention, generosity, and community in mind, and with purpose, integrity, and passion baked in. I wasn't surprised at all when Jean landed on a project that puts community at the forefront, because to me, it's a perfect marriage of what makes them tick as a person. Jean seems most at home when working on multiple projects at a time, so the break between this week and summer could be challenging. During this time, I plan to encourage them to explore the multiple, well-documented, and cascading benefits of relaxation and downtime. But for today, their project is entitled, Going Forward, Cooperative Research for Climate Resilience.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I will think deeply about relaxation, maybe even one day. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Scripps Institution of Oceanography rests on the historic land of the Kumeyaay Nation, land which was never ceded but was taken by force. And now, I have a trivia question for all of you. What do the hairstyles of ancient Rome, controlled burns in California, leatherworking tools from 50,000 years ago, and soil type identification all have in common? People, you are exactly right. Thank you for the shout out. They're all scenarios where academic researchers discovered something useful or true only by involving non-academic experts. So that is someone intimately familiar with their cultural practices or their trade. People. Good call. All right, this is called collaborative research. Fundamentally, collaborative research means doing research together across knowledge systems and expertise areas as full partners. It can be interdisciplinary, involve other institutions, communities, or non-academic experts. And working collaboratively is especially important in the field of climate change adaptation and mitigation studies. As in many other areas of Western science, there has often been a tendency to overlook and exclude marginalized populations in the course of climate change research. Frequently, those communities most impacted by climate change and the least responsible for its cause. Close partnerships with communities and resource user groups can expose inaccurate assumptions that scientists have made and enable better adaptation and mitigation strategies on the ground. So the goal of this Capstone project was to make that happen by building a training to encourage researchers to develop a holistic perspective of the problem of climate change and give them the tools to incorporate community knowledge into their research and propose solutions in an equitable manner. The image on the slide here is from the Global Arc, which is a local organization one of my fantastic interviewees works with, engaging community participants in developing sustainability solutions for their communities. So to talk about why this works and to encourage you all to take the training, I want to talk about the Johari Window. This is a concept from the field of psychology. It is an exercise for understanding created by psychologists Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham in 1955. And for the biologists in the audience, it's a little bit like a Punnett square. Knowledge is generated from two sources, the self and others. So information may be known to yourself and to other people, such as the fact that the sky is blue. Or it may be known to you and not to other people, like the structure of a molecule that your lab synthesized. Or it might be known to other people and not to you, like a local ecological practice that has shaped an ecosystem or a particular land in a particular place. And then working from the knowledge found in the other three squares, we can answer the questions about the fourth. We can use our knowledge and the knowledge of other disciplines, communities, or non-academic experts in the process of collaborative research. To talk about how to do this well, and to build the training, I reviewed a lot of case studies, gathered personal testimony from experts in the field of collaborative research, both from research institutions and from community groups, and then interviewed a lot of those folks as well to create training videos. So the interviewees who participated in this project come from a diversity of backgrounds and play a wide variety of roles, from geologists to climate activists, and interviewing every single one of them was an honor and a joy. Their interviews reflected not only their personal expertise, but their professional experience, and each of them emphasized the importance of doing collaborative research as an ongoing process of respectful and thoughtful mutual exchange. Interestingly, even though many of these folks don't know each other, have varied backgrounds and expertise, and work in vastly different realms, they all repeated the same three things. We talked about the importance of listening, the importance of respecting a diversity of perspectives, and absolutely crucially, taking action based on the information provided by research partners. One of these things alone is not enough for good collaborative research to create solutions for ongoing issues like climate change. This requires listening to the voices of community members, of people in different disciplines, and those whose knowledge is not confined by the letters PhD. The best results come from respecting those voices, taking their knowledge seriously, and finally, by taking action to incorporate their insights and their needs into research and solutions throughout the process of planning the study, conducting it, and implementing those results. Also, during the interviews, we identified three main areas for growth. Extractive models of current research, where researchers come to a place or a people and take information or materials and then leave, providing no benefit from the study to its participants or benefactors. Secondly, a lack of institutional support and funding for collaborative practices, which means that even if individual researchers are interested in working collaboratively, the way the institution is set up makes it difficult to begin to do so. And finally, researchers with savior complexes or neocolonial mindsets. And to explain that last one, let me tell you about a meeting I was recently in. I participated in the Scripps Rady Plastic Pollution Challenge, which was an interdisciplinary effort to address the problem of plastic pollution in the Southern California Bight. And we had, as I mentioned, a lot of interdisciplinary folks. So we had a good array of expertise for the particular area that we're working in, Southern California, and the field, plastic pollution reduction. And we were having a meeting discussing all of the data that we had gathered about Southern California, about consumer behaviors here, and on and on. And one of the researchers from Scripps Institution of Oceanography said, "Wow, this is all so great. How do we apply this to the third world?" And my friends, it has been a few years since I got my political science degree, so please feel free to tell me if this information is outdated, but Southern California is not in the third world. And so he was asking this question of a group of people who had no lived expertise, no research expertise that I'm aware of. And it not only, derailed our conversation, but it sort of demonstrated this paternalist attitude of here we have this first world problem, plastics production, single-use mindsets, the use and throw away culture that we've exported, and now we need to go and save these poor people and make their lives better. And we're going to do it here in this room full of Southern California plastics experts. Our solutions are not going to be very good. We don't have any lived experience on the ground. We don't understand what it's like, what would be implementable, what would be useful. And so that is, I think, a great demonstration of that researchers with savior complexes or neocolonial mindsets. And it is the exact reason that I built this training. So let's talk more about the training. The training begins with an opportunity for self-assessment so that researchers can familiarize themselves with the topics that we'll be covering that day, and as well take into account their own experiences or lack of experience with things like anti-bias, anti-colonialism, anti-racist work, and collaborative research. Then we have 3 modules that consist of videos, interviews, and hypotheticals, which were constructed from a combination of personal testimony and published academic papers. And then thirdly, we have the opportunity for researchers to reflect on what they've learned in that training and make a plan to go forward to improve their own community relationships and collaborative research. So the modules themselves, the first module is why. What makes collaborative research effective, why it's useful, why you should use it. The second is a theory module to situate collaborative research in the praxis of current research practices, as well as to explain science as one system of thinking, one system of knowing. The third module is a how, in very broad strokes, to conduct collaborative research. fourth and fifth modules are diversity in the lab. Not all science is field work, and there's a lot of room in collaborative research for cooperating in the lab as well. And then number 5 is further recommendations. So that's more specific information on how and where to go to get more knowledge on the topic. So after this training, researchers will be able to recognize biases and power dynamics in research, articulate a coherent vision for cooperative research, and initiate or improve their own community relationships for effective and mutually beneficial research practices. One thing that I want to emphasize is that the aim of this training is not to teach rote responses to predetermined questions or scenarios, but rather to suggest a praxis of inclusion and lateral learning. The training is intended as a starting point, not a comprehensive guide. Collaborative research takes committed involvement and is not something which can be learned in one sitting, particularly as there is no silver bullet method. So the training takeaways are the importance of respecting community knowledge, how to be mindful of power differentials and why it matters who has privilege and power in the research relationship, and most importantly, that doing cooperative research is an ongoing learning process and it's critical to self-reflect and seek feedback in each step of the research. The training implementation, the original scope of the project was to create a training with 3 modules, a brief introduction, and a brief conclusion to be presented by the faculty working group connecting Scripps to communities. However, I received a phenomenal amount of interest and will be presenting the training myself shortly to both Upper Campus and Scripps departments, as well as making it available online as a self-guided workshop with the permission of the interviewees. So the training is also longer and more comprehensive than originally intended, with 5 modules and a much more detailed introduction. So the training can be found here if anyone in the audience would like to participate in the self-guided version. And that link will be up again in a minute. But I'd like to close with this quote from Paulo Freire to acknowledge that this training is a starting point not only due to the ongoing nature of the work, but because of my own biases and constraints, some of which I'm aware of and some of which I cannot see. So there will be those who attend this training and ask, well, what about X scenario? And they're right to do so. There's more to this discussion than has been covered here, and I can only hope to spark interest, discussion, and the awareness that the strength and ingenuity to move forward in the face of climate change impacts comes from going forward together. So I will be satisfied if among the readers of this work there are those sufficiently critical to correct mistakes and misunderstandings, to deepen affirmations, and to point out aspects I have not perceived. I would like to thank my interviewees, Dr. Sarah Ahrens, Nicole Capretz, Dr. Allison Kaywood, Dr. Julie Maldonado, Dr. Mike Navarro, Ali Seifert, Dr. Isabel Rivera Collazo, and Paul Watson, as well as my Capstone committee, the chair, Dr. Rivera Collazo, Dr. Cheryl Peach, and Dr. Tariq Ben Marina, as well as everyone who has been so generous with their time over the course of this project. Unfortunately, I'm running out of mine, so just a very quick shout out to Margaret Morris from the Human Ecology Lab for all of her help with the website. Thank you so much, Margaret. All right, and questions. If you have a question that we don't get to, please feel free to email me. My contact information is on the screen, as well as the training link again. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a question from the web from Lily from Portland. And Lily writes, would you like to participate in collaborative research in the future? And if so, what kind?
Hello, wife. I love you. Yes, I would love to participate in collaborative research in the future. I think that there's room for it in every discipline. As I mentioned, have a political science degree as my undergraduate background, and I came to this program because it is inherently collaborative and interdisciplinary, and I want to keep applying that on into the future. I'm very interested in climate change mitigation. So, yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned that one of the barriers to cooperative research is the structure and timeline of funding. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, I would love to talk more about that. So one of the things that the interviewees from both the academic research institutions and community partners talked a lot about is that the structure of funding and of the academic year and of paper submission deadlines are all a little bit arbitrary, frankly, and also don't line up very well with community needs. So it'll be things like, let's say a researcher wants to go and work with an agricultural community and talk about what kind of adaptations they might need because of, oncoming droughts, like here in California. Well, there's a growing season, and there's a harvesting season, and there's a time of year when they're very busy. And our academic deadlines may not line up with the times when that community has spare time to offer us, to collaborate with. And so a researcher may be under a time deadline to achieve certain funding, and the community doesn't have time to build a proposal right at that moment. And there's very little flexibility in the research institution to make that happen and to deliver on solutions that will be helpful and practicable for the future and for those communities on the ground. So luckily, we are starting to see some movement. I do want to point out things like that the National Science Foundation are beginning to have more and more grants that do require community involvement as more than a box check. So there is definitely some forward movement on that front, but it is slow, and the process of university funding is restrictive.
Great. And Jean, last, we've got some, on the YouTube chat, there's some interest in taking this training.
Absolutely.
Could you just clarify, there's no password required for the online training, it's just a matter of sharing your email, is that right?
Right, yes. So the way that it works, our interviewees were exceptionally generous with their time and allowing us to post this for a broader audience than it was originally intended, which was just for Scripps. So sort of as a courtesy to them and to keep their information, if not controlled, then at least monitored. The page is behind a registration link. So you'll click the web link, fill in your information in a form, and it will auto-load to the next page. So yeah, just provide your email.